Hello, I'm William Gallagher, and this is 58 Keys, which, as always, is for writers like you and me who write on Macs and iPhones and iPads. Just subscribe because there's so much we can talk about, and every bit of it helps us put off the writing for a little bit. There might be particularly a lot to talk about now because of the new MacBook Pro. This is a new MacBook Pro. First time set up, moved to it, short version, fantastic. But you need to set these things up. And as a writer, the first things you have to do on a MacBook Pro, you don't have to. You can just open it up. Pages is already installed. Knock yourself out. But there are things to know. There's one setting, actually, that I was stronger than recommend, that I would urge you to change. I'll show you that, and I'll look at you until you give in and do it. And then there are a couple of settings that you'll think, nah, but I think might actually prove to be very useful. And then there are just a couple more things about the apps that we as writers most often use on this. A couple of things to know about them. And then there's also a pitfall or two. Okay. No, I didn't fall into the pitfalls that I'm about to describe to you. Not all of them. Right, actually, first thing, let me get me out of the way so I can show you. Okay, let me just make myself smaller then. That'll be a better idea. Yeah, put that over here, over there. Yeah, nothing gets rid of the chin, does it? Anyway, so MacBook Pro. It's just like any other Mac, which means up here we have system preferences. And it's typical, isn't it? There's one update already. I don't care how, if you buy a Mac, the second you get it, there's an update to something, and actually I should deal with that, but I'll deal with it later. Let me show you this setting, because actually, I've undone things to show you how to do them, and this one is driving me spare already. If we come over here to the trackpad, look, I do like the way they do videos here to show you how to use things, by the way, but look at this, tap to click. Oh, that is so much better. While we're here, tracking speed. I actually felt the MacBook Pro, for all its apparent speed, was quite slow because it turned out the tracking was way down there and something. What this tap to click thing does is, maybe it's because I'm used to iPhones and things where you just gently tap your finger on the glass. If this isn't on, then you have this gorgeous trackpad, you move to press a button or something, you have to actually physically press down. And it's not like that's hard, but it's an extra step. Turn that on and you can just glance your finger, rest your finger on the trackpad, and it works. It's so much faster, it's so much smoother that this is, in the last few moments before we started talking, I was thinking, why isn't this work? Oh, because I've got to press. I truly do not know why Apple insists on defaulting to it being off, but once you know it's there, it's gorgeous and fit. Actually, can I show this to you? Instead of clunk, I can just do, that's better. Yeah, you're not looking convinced, but trust me, particularly, let's go down here. You see this little thing coming up in the bottom corner? List of things I want to talk to you about. Now I'm in the way. Let me get myself over here. Okay, and let me get rid of this. I am actually finding that the smaller screen size than the wide monitor we use is taking me a time to get used to. I haven't decided yet where I want to kind of fling the apps into certain corners, and I'm using a split screen much more than I expected, even in the first couple of days of using this. But this thing here, this is a quick note, part of Apple Notes, just new with, in this case, macOS Monterey, but also iPad OS 15, iOS 15. It's this thing you can just drop in the corner, pops a note. When you're done with it, get rid of it. Very, very good for somebody rings and you just need to make a note of something. Very good for building up research of stuff. But there I was thinking, I know I've done this. I know I've made a list of things I want to show you. And I could move in the corner and that would appear, but it was not coming up unless I clicked. Now I have that trackpad thing set the way it should be. Move the cursor back in there and there it is. Trackpad settings, done. Find a path. This one, find a path and find a status. Find a path and find a status. There's something funny with those words. The path and the status in the Finder. This might be betraying my age, actually, but let's have a look at this over here. This is a Finder window. In fact, actually, Apple does it with icons. I tend to switch to lists. just because I usually end up with a lot of documents and folders to work with, and you can see more and you can drag them around more easily. So set it for that. But I find this window here looks weird to me. It looks slightly nude, actually, because it's missing things. This is what it's missing. If we go up to the view menu, go down here, and let's go first. Let's do show status bar first. 2 items, and that's the amount of space left. This is genuinely why I think it might be because I'm old. I'm used to having to be very, very conscious of how much space was left, and this would tell me all the time. But actually, even now, that 1.42 terabytes, this is a 2 terabyte drive, I've filled up quite a bit of it already before I've really done anything. So there's still a bit of me that wants to be conscious of it, and I do a lot of video editing, and if you do certain things in Final Cut Pro, it just balloons out and you get down to no space left at all. So as part of my work, I do need to be aware. Apple would rather you just didn't think about any of these things. Why should you care how many terabytes of space? You just want to get on with your work. I like that approach. I just can't seem to share it for myself. This one, let's go back. You saw this next one down here. Show the path bar. I just find this useful because, again, I end up with a lot of folders, a lot of files and things. But here we are. This bar here, that tells me my documents folder is in a folder called William Gallagher, me, which is in the users folder, which is on a hard drive that I've called Willow Cabins. All right, I'll tell you this. Previously, I used to name all my Macs after places in New York. You don't have to name anything. It comes as Macintosh HD for hard drive, and fine. But as soon as you've got 2 of them for any reason, or you're on a network in any way, then which one is which is a problem. So you tend to give them names, fine. So my Mac Mini upstairs is called Midtown Raw. So quote from New York rather than a place. My previous one was, which is still on the same network, is called Hudson Yards. And I've been through everything. I was going to call this Central Park, actually. But then on the day it arrived, after a very long wait on the order, just as it came to the door, just as UPS actually kind of chucked it on the door, I also found out that BBC Radio 4 has commissioned a play of mine, and the play is called Willow Cabins. Can't tell you why yet or what it refers to, but I'm never going to forget that this arrived on the day my first BBC Radio 4 play was commissioned. Not 100% sure I was supposed to tell you about that yet, but just between us, okay. So Willow Cabins, and in that, as well as just seeing a list so that you orient yourself or something, I can also click on that, and then if I go into pictures or something, there I am in pictures, back to there, back to there, back to there. I don't think it's a gigantic thing at this level. This level of folders, really, it's just because I haven't done very much on here yet. But at some point, I'm going to have folders within folders within folders. So many that, in fact, that tab bar, if I just go back to where I was there, that tab bar, there's not going to be enough room to show them all. They're going to squeeze down. And even then, as you hover over each one, it expands, and it can be very, very clear. So that's the path bar. Status bar gives you this. And to me, now, that looks right. I'd like that to be a little wider. But we're stuck in really personal preferences now, aren't they? I don't know. Everything so far, I think, has had a use and a purpose. That one's just me piddling about for aesthetic things. But yeah, okay. So we've done that. Oops. Apps we've already got. Yeah, this thing, gorgeous thing about Macs, isn't it? You're a writer. I'm a writer. We have a Mac. We can start writing. We don't have to go off installing anything. We don't have to buy anything else. Pages comes on your Mac. Or rather, it kind of does. Again, this happens most if you've got other Macs. If you're moving from another Mac, if you're keeping a couple of Macs running, you can find that, Pages is available to you, and Pages is free, and Pages is excellent. By the way, really underrated app there. But you have to do what's called adopt it. You go to I've already done this, so I can't show you everything, but if we go to the Mac App Store, let me get rid of that. Here's a Mac App Store. I can go into my account there. and get a list of things that I have done, and it's not working for some reason. Let's get over here. Oh, it was just starting to work, and just about to show you all the embarrassing apps I've bought ever. In there will be every app I've ever bought, and in here, updates. Oh look, there is an update to Pages. I could download this now. When I went in, when I first opened up the Mac, first logged in with my Apple ID, Pages, numbers there, Keynote. Yeah, I never used GarageBand, never used iMovie, but they were all there. The one I wanted was Pages, so I clicked on it, and normally when you click in the App Store, if you haven't already got it, it asks you to buy it. If it's free, then it starts downloading it anyway. You get to the point where it's just installed, except for these apps. With these apps, it actually said, no, you have to adopt them. And what it means is you've already got them. They're already linked to your Apple ID, the thing you sign into the App Store with. Now you're saying you want this other copy on this other machine to be part of that as well. And then when you say yes, and it downloads, and you never think about it again, but the Mac does. And every time you open Pages or whatever, all of your other documents from your other Macs are there. I mean, it's incredibly useful. I was sitting here setting things up, phone rang, needed something quickly. It was there without me doing anything because I had adopted this app, because I'd opened this app. There was the script I needed to look at. Macs are brilliant, aren't they? Now let's bring me up again. There we go. Yep, done all of that. Yeah, Migration Assistant. Yeah, tricky one. This Migration Assistant is Apple's system for letting you move from one Mac to your new one, or for setting up your new Mac to be the same as your old one. It is in all possible ways the best idea ever, because as well as moving the apps, moving the documents, it moves the licenses so that all of your apps just work the way they did, almost all. And all of the settings over the years, you adjust them. You saw the way I adjusted the tiny little width of the window, where you wouldn't remember that you'd done that, but when it isn't there, it's wrong, and it doesn't matter. Migration Assistant moves it all over, except I hate Migration Assistant. I loathe this thing. When I set up a Mac Mini earlier this year, it was just agony trying to convince it that the other Mac existed. That's because I was connecting it over Wi-Fi, I think. And in the end, suddenly, several hours in, it suddenly went, oh yeah, you mean that one? Yes. And clicked the button. And then it took untold millions of hours to copy everything over because Wi-Fi was quite slow. I vowed, because of the fact that it wouldn't connect, it wouldn't find each other, I would never use it again. And I didn't on this MacBook Pro at first. I started out from scratch, which I think I recommended to you. Started out from scratch, installed apps as I needed them, moved on to them when I was, ready for the next thing, changed the setting when I did it, and it was kind of fine and good. And then you started hitting software licenses that you'd forgotten, a number of users. It kind of became a problem, and I actually thought, yeah, go on then. I'll use Migration Assistant. Yeah, that didn't last though. This time I plugged a cable in between the two. Put a USB-C cable between the two, and both Macs went, oh yeah, there they are. And then it wouldn't do anything. If you can, get a Thunderbolt cable. It looks like a USB-C cable, but it isn't. You plug one into either Mac, assuming they have ports that will take it, and then Migration Assistant should work very, very quickly. In my case, it just wouldn't. It was, I didn't have a USB-C, I did have USB-C, I didn't have Thunderbolt, and it was going to take 160 hours to move things across. So I went back to just setting up each app one at a time. And I kind of recommend that because I realise actually I have a lot of apps that I never use. And I need to be careful of space on this because of video editing files. So I'm only putting things on as I need them. And yeah, there's some fiddling around. There is some business with licenses, the serial numbers for things. If you've got an app from the Mac App Store, none of that is a problem. You just go into the Mac App Store, you saw Pages and things, You download it, off you go. Sometimes settings in it need to be changed, but the license to have them, the things that you bought, they're still all yours. I have a lot of apps that I bought outside the Mac App Store, and every single one had to have their license reinstalled. Next, actually, whoa, okay, that's quite dizzying. I've got to stop doing that. I want to show you a thing called Default Folder X, and it is X, not 10. I did check. I keep wanting to call it 10. Up here in the menu bar. This is one of the first apps I use, and I don't actually tend to use this bit of it, but I want to show you this bit first so you see where it all goes. Default Folder X. This is a way to get round, recent folders. It does more. The Mac itself, actually, if you look under here, it has recent items. Default Folder X does more. Recent files, recent folders. Okay. But it also lets you do things like this. Let's go to the computer. Let's see what it's called. Willow Cabins, Users, Me, Documents. You see how fast it is to move around to anywhere you want it to go. And you can also set up favorites. So certain folders I tend to use a lot. Well, I put them in there, and I can just go, bam, straight to them. And there are folder sets. I don't tend to use this, but there are certain things in my accounts, for example, where I have a folder for certain types of expenses. And also there's a magazine where about 3 times a year, I edit a young writers magazine, and I will have a folder of all the original submissions, then a folder of the ones I've rejected, the ones I've accepted, image work and things. There'll be 4 or 5 folders, and they're always the same, always create them. And this thing would let me open them all in one go. So in fact, I should use that a bit more. But what I really use it for is this. Again, let me out the way here. Let's open up Pages. Right. Now, you kind of, if I hold down the key here, this that you can see here, this main section, this is a regular open dialog box in Pages. And I'll just let go of this and back onto here. This is what Default Folder X does. It adds these things around the side. For a start, notice this, Willow Cabins, the script I'm working on. Because I was opening it a lot, I could just drag it into here. But let's see if there's something else I can drag. Let's drag a video. And now wherever I am, actually in any application, I open it up and that's listed there. And if it works in that application, I can go straight to it. And down here, things like that, I can set up favorites, much the same as I did up in the menu bar there. I can do all the same things here. And this is where I use it the most. I use this a huge amount. I said this is an open dialog box. It's exactly the same with the save one. Can I show you something in here? No, it depends on the type of file you're using, but this section around here gives you lots of information about a document you're looking at. So really what it does, it gives you a preview of everything. So right, you're searching for something, you can find it in the list and then see it without bothering to open it yet. Yeah, no, I'm actually at risk of turning this into the Default Folder X show because I love that app so much. And I wanted this to be about things we can use that help us a lot when we first set up a Mac. And you've kind of seen most of them, but just writer to writer, let me show you other things I've done. I'll rapidly go through these. There's, for example, there is Alfred. Alfred is, it's Spotlight Plus. Really, it lets me find things, search for things, kill apps that are going wrong, actually just force quit them from the keyboard, launch shortcuts. There's a clipboard manager. It is utterly ace. Love this one. What else have I got to show you? Well, let's just check my list. Isn't Quick Notes brilliant? All right, you already know at length about that one. Keyboard Maestro, there's a whole episode of 58 keys, but it gives me keyboard controls and shortcuts, which is just superb. That'll do. Omni Outline and Omni Focus are kind of life support dependent on those. Drafts 5, I write in Drafts 5 for pretty much everything. Articles and things all start in Drafts 5, but you can just open it and start writing and then worry about where the text will go into a publisher's system, into a word processor, things like that. And Final Draft is even more specific. It's a script writing program. So let's do that and that. I said there were pitfalls. The ones I kind of skirted around and occasionally dipped a toe into, didn't actually fall all the way in, was this thing to do with what apps do I use, because there are so many and I'd forgotten them. you get so used to it being there, particularly with utilities, actually, the things that you set up once and then you use, but you never have to go into to change things. You forget that they're there until they're not. So utilities particularly, but also apps in general. I actually forgot to install OmniFocus, my life support dependent to-do app that I'm in and out of all day. I forgot that it wasn't already there on the Mac. I suggest then that before you start your new Mac, you write down a list of what you're going to use. As much detail as you can, particularly about preferences, if you can be bothered to dig into all of that, and certainly utilities. But I also recommend you do this. As you go through the Mac, as you add these things, as you set them up, write down another list, which is of everything you've actually done, because then it'll be accurate, but you'll see the preferences, that little adjustment to the Finder window. I wouldn't have remembered to write that down, but now I do. And at the end of it, you have a list of what you actually need on your Mac. At some point, you are going to move to a new Mac. I mean, these are expensive machines, MacBook Pros, hopefully not for a very long time. But when you are, there's a list. It'll make that transition much easier. Although, just by chance, a couple of months ago, I found a box of floppy disks. Floppy disks, you even remember them. And there was a little set of 5 that were labelled Essential Mac Apps. I labelled them that. I'm guessing in the 1990s, I'm not sure. I managed to get to see, most of them had labels on. I managed to open one of them. I saw a list of the apps, and I promise you, half of them, I don't even remember what they do. Then quite a portion of the ones that, actually including the ones I do remember, are now out of business. None of them were, not even essential. I don't use any of them anymore. So maybe I'm wrong, and in 5 years' time when you move to a new Mac, that list will be useless to you, but if it's useful, it's going to be very useful. And also as part of that, you saw I listed 1Password listed there. Use 1Password. Okay. I mean, there's also LastPass, and there's things like Safari is getting very good at adding passwords for things, but I found I needed software licenses a lot. And when I'd bothered to put them into 1Password over the years, getting them out again, it was just joy. I thanked my earlier self for doing it. Okay, so I've just been through that, ticked everything we're done. Let me close that. Also, let me bigify myself a little bit. Yeah, big yourself up sometimes. We're writers. We should do that. That's it for this edition of 58 Keys. Thank you very much for watching. Do take care of yourself. Write some more, and I'll see you soon. Now, can I go back to full screen or something?